Hey, Link here. Thanks for joining me for episode 108, where I speak with Dave Gilbert. In this episode, we talk about how they got into making games, words of wisdom from their experiences, the games that made him want to get into game dev, his favorite games, what makes gaming enjoyable to them, their life outside of gaming, and some lightning round questions. Before we get started, don't forget there are links in the episode description that you can follow to learn more about Dave as well as the podcast. Also, don't forget to like and share the episode, and without further ado, enjoy episode 108. Hi, and welcome to the Red Tunic Podcast, a podcast where I look to rediscover what makes gaming fun and enjoyable by having positive conversations with those related to the industry. My name is Link, and today I'm joined by Dave Gilbert, game designer from Wadjet Games, known for his contributions to such games as the Blackwell series, Unavowed, and the upcoming Old Skies. Hi, Dave. How are you doing today?
Hi, I'm doing good, thank you.
I'm happy to hear that you're doing well, and thank you so much for making time to have this conversation with me. I appreciate you agreeing and you being here.
My pleasure, man.
Before we get started, I'm wondering if you wouldn't mind giving me and anyone listening a little bit about yourself, kind of like the 411 or like the elevator pitch, just to who you are and the baseline things that you feel everyone just should know, you know?
Oh, sure. Well, I'm Dave Gilbert. I just turned 49 yesterday, and I've been running Wadjet, making point-and-click adventure games, making and publishing point-and-click adventure games since 2006. So it's been almost 20 years. This is year number 19. So we do point-and-click style adventure games. Are known for the Blackwell series, Unavowed. Currently about 3 weeks away from launching Old Skies. We've also published a number of games like The Excavation of Hobbs Barrow, Primordia, Technobabylon, Shardlight, Resonance, and a whole bunch of others. So yeah, that's pretty much the elevator pitch.
Awesome. So thank you for that, and also congratulations on 19 years. Your studio is legally old enough to vote now and maybe drink. I don't know for your state,
In
but
Europe,
it's getting
maybe.
there
In Europe,
in
maybe. Not
Europe.
not here. Not here. 3 more years. Yeah. Actually, yeah, it's about 2 more years. 2 more years.
But regardless, though, congratulations on 19 years. I know that, that is no small feat in today's industry, all things considered. So like, yeah, huge congratulations on that, on making it 19 years and hopefully another like 19 years in the future or what have you?
Same, yeah. That's all I want to do. So yeah, 19 years from now, if I'm still doing this, I'll be happy.
And like I said, I wish the best for you and that like in 19 years you still get to keep doing the thing that you love doing because being able to actually enjoy what you do is uh wildly and shockingly really great, right?
Yeah, yeah. No, tell me about it. I consider myself very blessed, very lucky.
Um, so as well, like, and I feel this is a good transition to go from there. And I'm wondering because you said you've been doing this since 2006. I'm wondering how is it that you got into developing and making games? Like, was 2006 when you started, or was that kind of when the studio started and you got started before that?
The latter. I started making games in 2001. Um, I always feel weird telling this story, but basically, I was living in New York. It was 2001. It was September. We all know what happened. And at the time, I was unemployed. I'd been laid off from this terrible corporate job that I hated anyway. But it always sucks not to be working. Then, of course, the towers fell, and I didn't want to leave my apartment. So I was looking for ways to kind of creatively vent my feelings, and I discovered Adventure Game Studio, and I always liked writing, and I made a little game in a weekend, and people seemed to like it, so I kept making them off and on for the next 4 or 5 years, and then in 2006 I reached a point where meanwhile I got another job, and then left that job, um, to sorry. Then I left that job, and then I kind of made games for fun, and I realized I didn't want to do anything else. And I decided to sell my game to see if it would go anywhere. And 19 years later, I guess it did. I guess it went somewhere because I'm still doing it.
You know, and that's great here, and it's wild to me that I'm trying to think of how to phrase, mainly because like the early 2000s when it came to making games and selling games as like a small studio or an indie or what have you was just a unheard of kind of, like Steam at this point wasn't really um huge in terms of the people they were letting in, and you were using
Yeah.
whatever you could sell on places that no longer exist in a lot of cases, and places that I honestly no longer even remember the name of. So like it's it's wild to me anytime I talk to someone and they're like, "Yeah, I did this thing in a time when selling like a smaller game was unheard of." Does that like I hope that makes sense what I'm saying. I think to you it will, but to other people it might not.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't it was the early 2000 when I started releasing them for free, but to sell them in 2006 was a whole different thing, obviously, because it was really hard to, it's very quaint to think about how um, that people really felt nervous about putting their credit cards online back then. And unless you had a storefront that was trusted, like at the time, like Amazon, people trusted Amazon. Steam wasn't really a thing yet. Just getting people to trust you as a legitimate shop was the most difficult thing. Like I had this little storefront set up that my brother-in-law put together, where it took payments through PayPal, and people trusted PayPal, so that worked. But yeah, it wasn't easy, and I kind of was inspired, weirdly enough, by this little indie adventure game called Zero Critical, which not many people have heard of, but I saw it in a shop. It was in a software etc. or one of those, and it was written by a guy named Istvan Peli or Paley. I'm butchering his name. I'm sorry, but he later on went to become an art director at Bethesda. But I saw this game, and I think I bought it because it was one of the few games that could play on a Mac. And I bought it and I played it, and it was okay. But what amazed me was that he created this game by himself in Macromedia Director of all things, and managed to get it sold in stores. He got boxes made and got it out and got it sold. And I was thinking in 2006, like, well, if he managed to do that, before digital distribution, like, I should be able, like, there should be a way to do this now. And that kind of what got me started. I just managed to figure out a way, and I just managed to earn enough just to kind of keep going. It wasn't easy. But fortunately, at the time, I was single and living alone in this little apartment in New York City. Living very simply. Working out of cafes because I couldn't afford Wi-Fi, and just leeching off their Wi-Fi all day. Taking advantage of their, free refill policy. I was terrible. But yeah, it was just whatever I could do to get the game made and done, and keeping each one very short and simple, and just sort of each one kind of iterating off the last one, and just kind of organically growing from there. So yeah, I'm very glad. It was very hard to start a game company back then, but at the same time, I think starting so early benefited me in the long run, because now people know who I am.
And that's always a nice thing to like have some form of recognition. And I say that in the sense of today's landscape, as I'm sure you've seen it, as I'm sure any smaller developer or newer developer, I should say, has seen it, is that, it really is a hellscape to try and like promote and get good traction. And if you look at like different places, they have all these, tricks and tips and what have you, to like get wish lists and to get
Mhm.
visibility and to, all that stuff. And, it's so much harder to do that, even when you are trying your best and following all the best laid advice, when there's like 1,000 other people doing that same thing. Whereas, in the early 2000s, the sheer fact alone that you would be making a game all by yourself. And now I'm not saying this in the sense of you personally, but just from my own memory. Like I remember PC Gamer, PC World, or one of the PC gaming magazines. They every now and then had an actual section of like, hey, these people are making a game all by themselves, and you would see something like World of Goo, I think, no, Gish, the game before World of Goo that they made,
Mhm.
and like other titles along those lines. And it's like, hey, if you want to buy this game, you'd have to go, like you kind of touched on, the website with a certificate or several certificates on the bum, like we passed validation. And then, like, if you were lucky, they went through PayPal. Otherwise, like you said, you had to be really trusting of those random certificates on the bottom of pages to then
Yeah.
give them directly your credit card info, right? Um,
I would get like I would get um, mailed. People would send me envelopes with like cash and foreign currency, and like and then I would just give them a link. I'd give them like access to the game, and then it'd like go across town to get it changed. It was just ridiculous what I did back then. But I was determined to make it work because I didn't I kind of hated the corporate jobs I had. I didn't like any other job I had before that, and I didn't want to go back, and so I was just determined to do whatever it took to make it work. Not really thinking that it would. I didn't really think that it would work, but it did. It just kind of it was slow, but like I said, it was organic. Like it just slowly grew, and so at this point, I feel like I have a very solid foundation, and just being known. I think that's what you were saying. Like having recognition already is extremely helpful because I I don't know what I would do as a new developer today in 2025. Every move I make is done with the background of knowing that I've got an existing fan base and almost 20 years worth of back catalog and reputation to kind of do the legwork for me. Not that, I mean, I had to do the work to get that, but the landscape was so different 20 years ago than it is now. So I wouldn't know how to start from scratch now. I'm glad I don't have to. But yeah, like back then it was just getting people to take indie games seriously at all. And even I don't even think back then they were called indie games. You had Gish and World of Goo and Braid, or like the brand new hotness, and there were other indies existed, but it wasn't a scene. It wasn't like uh, uh, it wasn't like the subculture that it did that it ended up becoming, and so no one would take me seriously. No one would take an indie game like that seriously. Now there's just too damn many of them. Sorry, I know you said not to swear. There are too darn many of them, and the difficulty now is getting them to notice you instead of the hundreds of other games that are out there. And the fact that I have an existing reputation and I've done this for so long, that helps. So that gives me an advantage, but at the same time, I had to work to get there. It didn't come from nothing.
so, I'm also wondering, like, now, in all fairness, again, you started in 2006 for your studio. So, like, this might not be this might not be as easy to answer, or it just might not be applicable. But do you have any like words of wisdom from your experience that you could share? Or better yet, maybe if you were to go back in time and tell yourself, like, hey, some do's and don'ts, like, hey, don't do this, definitely don't do this instead, or what have you. Is there any kind of advice that you would give a younger you or
Hmm.
anyone that wants to walk in your footsteps?
I think I kind of accidentally fumbled into the right decisions because, like I said before, I kind of started off um, very slow. Well, not slow. I started small. My first few games came out quite quickly. The Shiva came out in like 2 months. Blackwell Legacy came out in 4 months. I think Blackwell Unbound came out also in 4 months. The next game came out like in a year. And they just kind of like gradually grew. but at first I had no money to work with, no experience, very little money, and in order to get games out, everything had to be very, very small, and or at least the scope had to be very small. And I needed to get stuff out just so I could earn money to make more of them, and I didn't really think, oh, this is the smart thing to do. That was literally the only thing I could do. But in hindsight, I think that would be my advice to new developers, because I see a lot of new developers. They do this amazing epic, this gorgeous, just silky smooth, beautiful graphics, just everything super polished. Like it blows everything I did when I first started out of the water, but they have no experience selling games. They don't know what they're doing. And so they spend all their time, money, and energy. They spend years working on a project, their first project, and then they don't know what to do with it, and it doesn't sell well, and they get burnt out, and they give up. And I think my advice would always be to start small, because you don't know what you're doing yet. And so start small, get some experience, learn what works for you, learn what doesn't work for you, and then you can extrapolate on that and build on that. And then you build you don't just build your audience, but you build your self-confidence. You know what you're capable of doing. And I think that's what personally gives me a very strong foundation. I mean, I worry about the business all the time. I worry about if games will sell all the time, but at the very least, I know I've got like a back catalog to fall back on. But if Old Skies has taken me 5 years to make, well, 4 years technically. If this was my first game, and let's say the worst happens and it's a complete failure, I'd be done. There'd be nothing to fall back on. But now, heaven forbid, it's a total flop. I have my back catalog to fall back on. I'll be okay. Um, so don't start with your big epic. Work your way up to your big epic. That would be my advice.
So thank you for sharing. I've heard that advice before. I'm not saying that to like, you know, hand wave away or what have you, what everything you've said in the sentiment, just that that is common advice, and I think that's fantastic advice.
Easier said than
Um,
done, obviously. I
yeah,
know sometimes projects can run away with you.
yes, exactly, because there's some people I've spoken to where they are, they're the game that they are working on, or people I've spoken to, people I've seen, what have you, that their game they're working on is definitely like their first game or one of their first games, and it's this grand, big, epic, and it's one of those things where I always see that and like the concern of I hope you don't get burnt out because
Yeah.
as anyone that has worked on the same kind of project, regardless of what that project is, for years and years and years, it's easy to get incredibly burnt out over it. It's easy to, in your case, as you touched on, like you have something to fall back on, in that you have like the history and you have, these other games and all this other experience and what have you. But like if you don't have anything to fall back on, that's a really harsh thing. Like if you stumble or if you get burnt out or you just hit a wall, right? Like it's just
Yeah.
it can be so demoralizing. So, the idea of starting small for a whole myriad of reasons, I always love that advice just because, it's fantastic and it's incredibly nuanced, just like sometimes it runs away from you. And, sometimes you get lucky, just like you could if a small project as a big project, but like it can just be so hard. So I always love hearing the start small advice just because it's uh especially in today's economy, it's such a safe thing. And, you know, uh, with today's economy, like not having not burning out is just such an important thing. Just because,
Or at
um,
least, I mean, burnout's going to happen. The important thing is you need to know, like, how to handle it when it happens. Because I get burnt out. I don't want to say I certainly get burnt out like everyone else, but I recognize the signs. I know what I need to do to kind of take care of myself. It's that kind of stuff is important.
yes, thank you again for that. That's also important to like be able to learn and and what have you. So thank you for that.
Oh, you're
Now,
welcome.
Dave, I am curious. I'm wondering for this just because I'm gonna make some assumptions,
Hmm.
and feel free to either confirm or correct these assumptions. But when you first started making games, was there a game like before that maybe, or what have you, like, was there a game that you played that made you go, "Oh yeah, this is what I'd like to do if I could, if I knew how, or if I ever have the time, or
Ooh.
what have you?" Like, was there a game for that? And, my assumptions were that it would be a point and click just because that's what you started with. However, um, assumptions can always easily be wrong, but, like, just was there a game that made you wanna do something like this? And, what game might have that been? Or games, plural.
How several? I mean, I don't know if there was any particular one. I know I was really fascinated by Discworld Noir back in the day, like in like '99. Just for the structure of it, it had this like note combining interface, which was such a brilliant way of working your way through a mystery story. I just thought it was so well done, and the fact that it was Discworld was cool as well. But that mechanic I just loved. And I copied it for Blackwell. I just stole it. I just stole that mechanic. I just used it. And I met Chris Bateman, the creator of Discworld Noir, later, and he thought that was cool. He felt that more people should have used that mechanic, and I agree. I'm surprised more people haven't because I think it's just so great. But I always wanted to do I wanted to do a game like that. I know that there was a game called uh, Eternal Darkness: Saturday's Requiem, which was on the GameCube of all things, and it was a horror game. I don't understand it either, but there was something so fascinating about the structure and the pacing of that game, the multiple generations storyline, and I remember loving it and just thinking like when I saw the structure of it, it just seemed so simple, but they managed to took this very simple idea, the simple structure, and they kind of put a brilliant story around it, and I I love that idea of like a multiple generational story, and that also was maybe a slight inspiration for Blackwell. But definitely, like I was definitely inspired by Gabriel Knight, like a lot of point and click devs are. I wanted to do for New York what Gabriel Knight did for New Orleans. Find some like supernatural conspiracy, find some real like historical event, and build a supernatural conspiracy around it. I did that with Joseph Gould and Joe Mitchell in Blackwell. Both real people. I always get a kick when people discover that. Um, and yeah, so there's any number of things, but mostly it was just I grew up with the point and click adventure games, and I kind of knew the tropes and the language of these games. And when I wanted to write something, I've always liked writing, but nothing ever really stuck. But there was something about writing stories in that format and that genre that kind of triggered something. It kind of for some reason I felt I really was able to connect to it. Maybe because I was so familiar with them because I loved them as a kid, and so being able to write stories using using those point and click mechanics, just kind of rubbed me the right way, and I feel like I was able to kind of build a connection with my work and build a connection with the audience that I was never able to do before. It's a bit esoteric, I know, but basically, it turned out like when I started making them, it turned out I felt I was good at it, and people seemed to like them, so I just kept going. That's the main reason.
So thank you for sharing that. And I'm admittedly not super familiar with point and click games, and there's a reason for that, and that is also the reason I'm going to ask this one. And for me, the games that I was usually exposed to in the point and click world was stuff from Sierra. So, Space Quest, Police Quest, Leisure Suit Larry, because I grew up in the era where parents didn't consider the computer to be anything that needed monitoring, or at least one of my parents. My father was the one providing said games, and uh, you know, installing Doom on on the computer as when I was 7, and just being like, yeah, have fun. Here's how you start it up in DOS and what have you. Anyway, so so that's why my exposure's kind of not as big, just because the I played the point and clicks that he would play because he knew how to play them, and that way, if I got stuck, I'd know how to get through them and what have you. Because you know, I was 7 in like 1995, and the internet was the internet. It wasn't as full of game walkthroughs and such, right? Um,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
But my question, offshooting from everything you said for this was, what exposure, like who were your go-to point and click games when you were younger? Like, was it going to be like me where it was just mainly like one company, or were you kind of playing all of them?
Well, funny enough, I mean, I played like some of the. I was more of an Infocom guy, actually. I played because I had an Apple IIc growing up, and so there wasn't a lot of games that could play. Some of the Sierras could play on it, not many of them. I think King's Quest 1 through 4 could play on them. Manhunter could play on them. Um, but mostly I was an Infocom kid because I played all of them. I just love them. Um, and so I played some of the Sierras. But then when I went away to college, to university, I deliberately avoided getting a computer that could play a lot of games. I said to myself, okay, I'm when my parents offered to get me a laptop, my freshman year, I was like, okay, here's this black and white Mac PowerBook. It was this laptop. It was, a whole like I think an 8 MB hard drive, whatever. And it was black and white. I figured that would not I would remove the temptation to play video games on the computer. Of course, that meant I got really into text adventures. Like there was an indie text adventure development scene, like Andrew Plotkin and Emily Short and all of those folks. And I played all of them because I will find a way to procrastinate. There'll always be. They'll always find a way. So I played a lot of those, and then when I graduated, I did a lot of catch up. I got a computer that could play more games. I'm like, I'm gonna play all the games that I couldn't play, when I was avoiding games. And so I over the course of like a year or two, I just played a whole bunch. So it was really like I can't really say there was any specific game from my youth that I can think about, but I do know that um, I did play. I love it was I was the Infocom guy for the most part.
So, thank you for that. And that's see, I grew up strictly on Windows.
Mhm.
So the other side of that coin has always been fascinating to me because I knew largely that those machines existed, that they had their own ecosystem, in like the same way that I know, like the Commodore or the myriad of like European personal computers that existed, where that whole scene was its own thing. So like I've
Mhm.
always been aware, but I'm never in depth aware. So thank you for sharing that because that's really interesting, and it's also amusing that in your how do I put it? In your attempts to not play games. Instead, you effectively, it sounds like you just found a bunch of muds and then went down
I,
that rabbit hole.
kind of. I did play a few of those as well. But I played the Discworld mud. That was me. I was on there. But yeah, there weren't muds. They were just the text adventures I played were they were they were standalone games from people who also grew up on Infocom, and the Inform engine had just been made. So there was Inform and there was TADS, and people made their own and put them on the Usenet groups, and I would download and play them because I will find a way, as I said.
So, Dave, I apologize. I feel that I need to explain what this is because if anyone's listening, they're probably not in your age group. And I mean no offense when I say this, but for anyone that's listening and is like, "Well, what's a Usenet group?" Think of Discord. Just think of
It's more
Discord.
think of Reddit. It's more think of Reddit is what it's. It was Reddit seems more familiar, more similar to Usenet than anything else.
That is fair. I just don't know if the kids use Reddit now. I don't know if they're all in on Discord or
Oh, I
not.
don't even use Reddit. So from what I hear, it's like it's like the old news. It's like Usenet groups. Like all right, um, yeah.
For what it's worth, I started with IRC. So,
Ooh.
there's where I sit in the weird age group of acquiring things or knowing the things that work. So, it's it's always hard to try and find similarities for tech that weirdly still exists, just is under the radar. Because apparently, just like IRC, Usenet still exists, and that always blows my mind. Um, I don't I don't understand how it still exists, but it does, and it's just always It's always an amazing thing to me to know that.
Usenet still agree. I guess they still kind of do.
Um, all I can really say is the most I hear about it is from a few of my friends who use it 100% to acquire TV shows and movies. Um, and that's the extent that I know is that that's what they were using it for. So I don't know what else it does. It's just that's all I know it is from them though.
Yeah.
Um, so but anyway, thank you, Dave, for sharing that and entertaining the or humoring the little side tangent there. But I am also curious, just because you mentioned a handful of games. I'm wondering, do you have a favorite game or favorite game series or what have you? And if you do, like, what game is that? Like, what series is it, and like, what is it that makes that one stand out and stand apart for you?
A favorite game. I mean, there's a game that I will always come back to. Um, well, I know that you have on your list here. It says favorite game and then current favorite game. So
Yes,
I don't know how to separate these two questions. So I'm basically answering both questions at the same time.
go
Um,
for it.
yeah. I always loved Knights of the Old Republic, the BioWare game from I think 2004 or 2002. I'm not sure when that came out.
Around that area.
Yeah, like I just found it just so rewarding, and I still find it incredibly rewarding. Just and that well, that's that kind of mid-era BioWare from, the Knights of the Old Republic, Dragon Age, the first Mass Effect. Um, just the I find it very it rewards like multiple playthroughs because you depending on which companions or characters you take with you, and almost becomes a whole new story based on who you have with you and how they react to things and the stuff they say and things like that, and how you treat other characters and go through it. Like I find those games so utterly rewarding, and Unavowed was my attempt at making a game like that. Old Skies is not like that, but it's a kind of it's a style that I just love. It's a style of game that I just love, and I still come back to those games again and again and again. I just love them.
So, thank you for sharing that. And it's funny because Knights of the Old Republic, 2 is the one I played more because I remember playing more, mostly because I beat it at least twice. The first one I hit a few glitches that were showstoppers, but it was showstoppers when you were like mid to end game, and it's like
Really,
I'm not
because
going
the
back.
second one was known for having all the bugs in it. That's interesting you say that.
Which is really funny for
Yeah.
me because I'm the type of person where my luck when it comes to games or software is that if there's a bug, I'm going to find it, big or little. Like if for whatever reason there's something that makes you fall through the world map geometry in an open space that they're probably play tested with hundreds of man hours, I'm gonna find it, and it's gonna be one of those things where it's like, why me?
Hmm.
Um, and Knights of the Old Republic 2, outside of El Shadar, I think it is, um, it was largely safe for me. It didn't have horrible corruption. It didn't really show stop me from moving forward. But Knights of the Old Republic 1, it definitely did on more than one occasion. And I never could understand it.
That's
And I could
fascinating.
never figure out, looking back on it now, like how the more solid of the games didn't, like how it's the one, but it's
Hmm.
always a series that I've wanted to go back to just because, like they're fantastic games, like you said, like the story wise, the gameplay, it's all really interesting, it's all really fun, and Dragon Age and Mass Effect as well, and like so yeah, I'm sorry. Miserating is the wrong word. I'm just in agreement that those are fantastic games. Really, is all I'm getting at. Sorry, I was trying to find the best way to go through that, and that's it. I just agree that they were fantastic games, and like I kind of like yourself, it's I think fondly of them and look forward to having time one day to get back to them. Um, but for me, unfortunately, I'm an idiot and I keep building my backlog, so. Uh, those days
Yeah.
are very far off, I think, unfortunately for me, especially
Uh,
when I keep buying JRPG.
oh gosh, well those can last a lifetime.
Yes, like I yeah, some of them where it's like, "It's only 70 hours." It's like, I don't know if you're saying that to say it's short or long because some of them are 130. Like, I don't know what that selling point is, and
I
that's
know that there
it's a
was that once I've heard somewhere that what's their name, where Enix or was planning on making the next Dragon Quest more adult. And my thought was, if you want to make it more adult, make it short enough that an adult can complete it. Because I can never finish a Dragon Quest game. They're just too long, and I just run out of steam. I just can't do it.
Yes, and I'll share a secret with you, and it's there are some games like Final Fantasy VII, the original, I never beat, and even I started that when I was younger. The problem was, I started playing it, and I got to a point, and then I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna breed chocobos," and then, like 12 hours later, I'm like, "I don't remember what I'm supposed to be doing anymore." Um, so, like, in the sense of, yes, I agree, shorter games are beautiful, but also for short games, long games, I'm not really gonna be picky on this. Having a thing that just says, "Hey, you should do this next." I
Hmm.
I love that. I think that's fantastic because if I do put it down and get distracted with something, let's say taxes, because sometimes taxes are a whole ordeal, or the car needs, anything that's distraction enough to like pull me away from something. If I don't get back to it for a week or two, I would love to have a thing that says, "Hey, stupid, you were supposed to go and beat up Jacob McGee. Go do that." Like
Mm.
I
There's
love
an
it when games do
interesting.
that.
Also one of my comfort games is Ace Attorney, and I love the Ace Attorney games. And one thing that I'm always fascinated by, because each of the individual cases in Ace Attorney, it's labyrinthine. There's just like twisty is all these twists and turns, and there's just like references to things that happened several hours ago or whatever. And I noticed that in the moment to moment when I'm playing it, I'm always amazed that it's constantly flashbacking, is that the word, to things that happened like 10 minutes ago. And they always make sure, it's almost like if there's ever they mention someone's name or they mention an event, they want to make sure, like, okay, they think to themselves at every moment, okay, what if it's been like 2 weeks since they last played the game? So there's a little reminder about like what this thing is or who that is or whatever. Like, and in the moment, it's kind of annoying because it feels like everything is so redundant and they're constantly repeating it themselves. But then, yeah, I go away for 2 weeks or whatever, and I come back to it. I'm instantly up to speed again, and I instantly remember what's going on. And it's done so subtly and just so cleverly. I'm always very amazed by it.
Yes, I understand what you're saying, and I I agree. Like that's such a wonderful thing. For
Yeah.
like you said, for anyone that's, put a game down for like a week or whatever, and it's like, what's going on? Who's this person? But yeah, no, so like yes, I understand, I agree, and it's always sorry, I'm not this isn't anything meant to be mean when I say it. I don't remember what I was going with, so
I was
I'm
talking
gonna
about
jump
Ace Attorney.
yeah. Um
Yeah.
sorry, no, I was trying to think of the thread. Um But yeah, no, it's always nice when games are like, "Hey, stupid,
Yeah.
this is who this was." And it's something that I've always encountered with like books where, I listen to audiobooks because it's easier for me. And one of the problems is I listen to, you know, um, like World of Time, or sorry, Wheel of Time, or wow, I can't believe I'm forgetting the name of like Stormlight Archive, like those big books, right?
Hmm.
And it's always a horrible thing for me when I put it down and it's been like a month. So I've been busy. I haven't been able to devote like actual attention to doing it and juggling things or what have you. And I get back and it's talking about this person's name. And it's worse for fantasy when it's using fantasy names. And it's like,
Oh
I
gosh,
don't
it's the
remember who
worst.
any of these people are. And then, like, you have to look it up online. It's like, who was this person? I need a flat, like a quick, like, you know, refresh on who they are. And then you realize, like, oh, they die, like, at the end. You're like, oh, well, cool. I spoiled it by accident, just trying to remember what was happening in this
Right.
moment.
That
Um,
happens with like Netflix shows a lot when it's like 3 years between seasons. You're like, I love the show. Then you watch the first episode of the second season, you have no idea what's going on, so you have to start over, which I've done.
so That just reminded me real quick, and I think you might appreciate this or what have you. But one of the things that I learned is when it comes to like normal TV, when people still watch normal TV, um, was that you would have like a series that ran for let's say 20 episodes or what have you, and by the
Mhm.
time it got to like the 10th or 12th or 13th episode, the previews for that episode were huge spoilers for things that happened like 10 episodes ago because it's, iterating and building on itself for the plot and all of this. And when people were like, oh, I'm watching this show, and I'd be like, oh, is that the one with the twin that shows up? And you find out there's like, actually a whole bunch of twins and they're all killing each other. And like my friends would be like, sorry, what? There's only one twin. What do you mean clones? And it's like, well, I don't know. It's what the TV says, right? And I'd be like unintentionally spoiling every major show for people because they were acquiring it themselves from Usenet groups, and I was just saying what I saw from the commercials that were on currently.
Oh
um,
God, yeah.
and it's always such a wild thing that like Netflix can do the same thing, or if, like you said, you accidentally step in and you're like, I don't know what's happening right now. Like, what is this? Um, but anyway, Dave, I do want to ask you this one just because you you've been doing this for a long time. You've been playing games for even longer, and like what is it for games that make them enjoyable to you? And like I know that that is something that could, largely can be different from 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 5 years ago, what have you. But like what is it now that if you're going to sit down and like find a game to relax with, find a game to enjoy, like is there something that you're going to look for telltale signs of like the genre or what have you that you're gonna be like this is going to be something I enjoy, and like what kind of things might those be?
Um, Gosh, it's that's a hard question to answer. Hmm. I don't know. I guess like there's a wonderful quote by Terry Pratchett where he said, um, "There's nothing wrong with escapism, providing that it gives you a place to escape to as well as from, and you come back better for the experience." And I think that's kind of what I want. If I'm, I guess you never know. Like there's, I can't really say what is it that attracts me to like a specific game or a specific book or movie or whatever, but I do know like what makes me stay with it because games can take a long time, and often if it's like I like the characters or I like the environment or the atmosphere or something where I feel like I'm taken out of myself for a little bit. Um, that can be why I stay with it and why might look for something from that same developer or writer or whatever or franchise or whatever. I guess there's no real rhyme or reason. It's just whatever you know. There's a certain number of things that I'd like, and if it seems to, um, press the right buttons, I'll go for it, much like anyone.
So, yes, I can understand and I can relate to that. And I like the idea of or the Terry Pratchett quote. I like the idea of that where I'm gonna kind of like I'm worried I'm gonna butcher the meaning of it, but like the being able to go away from some but come back better. From
Yeah.
due to escapism or anything really, right? But being able to grow from something and be left in a better state from it, I think that's just a wonderful sentiment to have and like a wonderful goal to have because, you know, it's it's never too late to like try and grow or however you'd like to phrase that, and like think
Yeah.
learn from things or grow or whatever, whatever, whatever. So like I just thank you. I like that quote. I like the sentiment behind it, more or less is all I'm getting at there.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm right there with you. Well,
So
obviously you're agreeing with me, so of course I'm right there with
yeah,
you.
yeah, yeah. I was gonna say that's your thing. Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, of course I'd hope you'd be there with it, Like far be it from me to ever call someone out on changing their opinion on something. But usually I would hope it doesn't happen in the course of 30
Never know.
seconds.
You never know.
Um
Opinions are
well,
fluid. Anyway, sorry.
you're absolutely I used to work at a place where they had this, I'm on the fence of whether or not I actually like the sentiment of what it was saying just because of what the company was itself. But they had a policy or a internal saying or something where it was um, a strong opinions weakly held, I think it was. And I don't, the sentiment behind it, I always thought was fine. I appreciated it, but it's one of those things where I don't know how strongly I agree with it 5, 10 years later or what have you, you
Yeah. Oh
know?
my. Oh yeah. I seen. There was a YouTube video that I had made private. I was looking through like my old like the channel of all my old videos. And there were some that I had made private, and I found this like video I made from 2008. I had been in business for 2 years, where I was talking about like some choices that I made and why I was doing certain things, and this is how things work. And in my vast experience of being an indie game developer for 2 years, this is what I know. And I'm watching this, and I'm just like, this is all wrong. I don't agree with any of this. And it's like anyone who might have taken my advice back then, I feel bad for them because it's just uh, also the way the industry works changes constantly, and so stuff that I thought I cracked like 5 years ago is completely different now, and I yeah I just am constantly reevaluating everything, and so yeah there's this you can't be too what's the word myopic when it comes to this stuff. You gotta be flexible.
Yes, yes, and I think like at the core, that's what their policy, their internal saying was meant to be about. Um, Except they had some really weird hills that they like to stand on and die on, which is where my confliction with the quote or like the sentiment comes from, just because practice what you preach kind of thing. Except unless you're on the big hill that they are, then shut up and do what they say. Anyway, that's a whole nother topic,
Yeah,
but you get what I'm saying. You know where you also understand the sentiment of it, and what have you.
I totally do. Yeah.
So Dave, I do want to ask this because I'm curious because one of the things I like to do and talk about is like developers are human beings, and you are obviously a human being because you are a developer. Um, Funny how those causation correlations don't work or do work. Anyway, sorry, I have a cat screaming and like
I heard. I was wondering.
absolutely fraying the few threads I'm trying to tie together. But what I'm wondering is like outside of gaming, what is it that you do? Like, what do you enjoy doing? Like, how do you relax? Like, what is your day to day life or what have you outside of gaming? Because I imagine gaming isn't all that you are. But if your free time is mostly devoted to gaming, by all means, that is perfectly valid. I'm not going to judge, but
Mhm.
I still like to ask all the same.
Well, I mean, I'm pretty boring. I like reading. I like movies. I spend a lot of time with my family. I go. We just moved to the Philly suburbs, so now that the weather's nicer, we've all been doing like a lot of hiking in the area. Just we love hiking, that kind of stuff. Traveling, not as much as we'd like because it's expensive. But yeah, pretty boring basic stuff. I'm no For most of my life I was a city guy. Now I'm living kind of in the suburbs, and it's an adjustment. So I'm adjusting to suburban life. So I'm trying to learn like DIY and putting together garden furniture and stuff like that. Was Once summer hits, I'm gonna learn to grill. Never really done that regularly. So yeah, right. That's my day to day life. I'm a boring suburban dad now, basically.
So, I apologize, but I have to ask this as a follow-up then.
Sure.
So, how are you handling that transition uh from being what many would probably say hip to being a suburban dad?
I was never all that hip, even when I was living in New York. It's been an adjustment. I mean, I like the quiet. I like the space. It's very much. I think this is better in tune with who I am now. Especially just when you have a family, you need more space. Like uh, city apartments just don't. Just we're not doing the job. We needed outdoor space. We needed things like that. Being able to drive places is a game changer. Just like being able to do errands and put things in the car without having to deal with the logistics of getting big bulky crap home. That's nice. But I do miss the city, and I always will. I'll always be a city guy. Maybe one day I'll go back, but I think at this point in our lives, like this is a good place for us.
I'm happy to hear that for you. As someone that lives in um, the quote unquote city of Ottawa, and I say quote unquote because the city of Ottawa, the nation's capital, I'm emoting a shrug for anyone that's listening. Um, is largely speaking a bunch of kind of small, medium-ish cities merged, amalgamated into one, and there's like really only one or two actual downtown cores. There's nice little areas, but there's only real like one downtown. Um,
Mm.
but even as small as this, what I'm getting is even as the small as the city is, it was always wild to me that people are like, oh, you don't need a car for a city like for Ottawa or for a small one. You can just take public transit, regardless of how bad or good public transit is. But it was always wild to me when people would say that, and then you would see someone on like the city bus with like a Walmart grocery cart that they stole full of stuff. And it's like, I don't think that's the intention, but hey, you do you. But I'm not gonna
It's
narc,
like I need to
just
go to the
do
hardware
it.
store and the pharmacy, and I needed to I need to go to the grocery store. It's like, how am I going to get all of this stuff? Like, how am I going to get all this stuff home in like one or two trips? Like, yeah, that's always the logistical nightmare you got to deal with when you go do any errands living without a car. Even if you do have a car, just parking, it's a pain in the butt in the city. I never had a car when I lived in the city.
You know, I personally avoid going downtown strictly because of the parking, because of, having to figure out the logistics of that. And like Ottawa downtown is relatively small, but like gun to my head, I'm gonna say pull the trigger. I don't want to do it. So like I 100% understand and can relate to even with having a car, like navigating and negotiating, just driving around and parking in such a
It's like that
scenario.
that terrible joke. It's like I don't know anyone who drives in the city. I mean, the traffic's terrible.
Yes, yes. I
Well, the
that
joke is like you don't know anyone who drives, and yet there's a lot of cars on the road.
yeah,
And who
yeah.
knows where they come from?
I've been to New York City once in my life, and I was amazed by the amount of uh, existence that there was. One also being the amount of cars. I grew up in a smaller town, a farming town of like 5,000 on a good day. So
Hmm.
like me getting to go to New York and see a mass amount of cars, and like even the tour guide that was guiding everyone around was like, I don't know anyone that drives. There's just, and he just like gestured, he made the same joke, but it's like it's funny to me because it's exactly that, like there's so much traffic, like how would anyone conceive getting a car to sit in that traffic if they don't have to, right?
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
anyway, I digress.
We're
Thank you
totally
for
total tangent.
Yeah, but I digress. Thank you for sharing that, and I hope that you know, hope you master the art of grilling. Like I hope that you adapt and settle nicely to suburban life. You know, uh, I 100% understand it, and I hope it works out well for you. The transition and just being able to exist without being crammed into a small apartment and having to navigate everything that is
That
apartment
change
life.
is nice. Yeah.
But Dave, I do want to ask you this. I do want to hit you with this if you are okay with it. And they are, just a few quick things before I effectively, shut up and let you get back to your day and let you get on with your soon to be evening and what have you. But if you have a few moments, I'd like to bug you with the lightning round. And the lightning round is basically they're just lighthearted, nonsensical, a little bit random questions. And if you have time, I'll hit you with them. And they just a heads up, they are no judgment. They are random, and you are free to answer them however you see fit. If you so much as decide to go down that route with me.
Sure.
Awesome, awesome. So I'm just gonna hit you with these, and we'll see how you go with them.
Okay.
If a fast food restaurant that had a meal based on your favorite game series, what would that meal be and what would that restaurant be?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Sure. If a fast food restaurant had a meal based on your favorite game series, what would that meal be?
Oh my God. Um, okay. Well, I'd say my favorite series is probably Ace Attorney. So, I don't know. It would have to be some kind of like legal themed. Um, oh God, this is hard. Now I got to think of something. Now I got to think of some clever pun involving Ace Attorney and food. You're making me. I can't pun on command. Um, I don't know. It would be have to be Ace Attorney related.
That's fair. And I do
Yeah, sorry about
apologize
that.
for that.
Yeah.
Trying to put you on the spot with like a
No,
dad joke or a pun.
you can edit this out if you want to. It's also very distracting here, so it's hard for me to like think of something clever like right away.
No, no worries, no
Yeah,
worries. Such is life.
yeah.
Um, Here, let me hit you with this one then. This one might be a little easier that doesn't require a pun or what have you. Uh,
Thank you.
which video game character do you think is most likely to put orange juice over their cereal?
Oh God. Okay. Orange juice over their cereal. What video game character is likely to put orange juice over their cereal? Um, okay. Probably. All right. Well, if we're talking like a game like King's Quest, like Graham would totally do that, and it would somehow kill him because
you
that's
know,
just what would happen.
yeah, you'd learn that gold needle that you've been carrying the entire game. You were actually supposed to put it in there for whatever reason. That was the solution to the orange juice in the cereal puzzle, right?
Yeah.
So thank you for that. Um, which video game character do you think is dumb enough to fall for a Nigerian prince email?
Oh God, there's just too many. Um, I mean, I got to limit my answers to Ace Attorney because there's just too many games, too many characters. Um, uh, but like, okay, I'd say Maya Fey would totally fall for that, and then somehow it would involve her getting framed for murder because that's what always happens to her.
So thank you. And I yeah, fair enough. So I did have another one I was going to hit you with. However, if I feel that the answer to that one would be another Ace Attorney related, and that's nothing against you. It's just who would be most likely to be pro Salem witch trials, and it would probably be someone from Ace Attorney because they would see that as a chance to make money, right? So I'm gonna hit you with this one instead. And for this one, if it's Ace Attorney, by all means,
Uh,
it can be. But which video game character do you feel is most likely to text a picture of their feet at 2 a.m. and ask, "Do these look the same size to you?"
um, these are so random, dude. These are so random. Take a picture of their feet. Um,
For strictly educational purposes too. They just want to know if they look the
all
same
right, that
size.
if we're going with Ace Attorney, Larry Butts would totally do that. I don't know how familiar you are with these games. You might not have no idea who I'm talking about, but that is a Larry Butts thing to do. He would also fall for a Nigerian Prince Graham.
So I will trust you on your breakdown of that. And thank you for that. I'm not going to bug you with any more lightning round questions. Thank you for wading through that with me. And yes, I
Not
am
a
aware that
problem.
they are completely random. That's the intention. I hope to catch people off guard with them. And
Mission
I
accomplished.
I think one day I think I want to punish someone with the whole episode will just be questions like that. But that takes effort on my part as well. So I'm not really there yet. But one day I think I'll do that just to be mean. But thank you for waiting through that, for surviving it with me.
Oh, you
Um,
survived. Yes.
but outside of that, I'm done bugging you with time. I'm done stealing time away from you and bugging you with questions about uh, you know uh, orange juice and cereal and feed and what have you. But I do want to offer up that if there was anything else you did want to discuss, something like a cool game or what you're doing or something you just feel more people should be aware of, by all means, I want to give you the opportunity to talk about, something that you might want to talk about that we might have missed. And in the same
Nothing that
vein,
not that I can really think of.
oh, awesome. And that's great because I like I said, I like to always offer it. But if there wasn't anything else that you feel we missed, that's also even better because it means I didn't miss anything glaring. Um, as well, I'd also like to ask, where can people find you? Where can people learn more about you so that they
Okay.
can like
Well,
follow you and such?
I am on Blue Sky. I'm still on Twitter for now. I am on Discord. We have a website, wadgetigames.com. That's WADJET. I am very online. If you just look me up, you will find me. I'm there.
So, thank you for that, and I will be absolutely certain to put, all of those links in the episode description so that people can join the Wadjet Eye Games Discord server, or track down the site or follow you on Twitter or Blue Sky. Although it sounds like Blue Sky might be the better way to go in your scenario, which I completely understand. I think a lot of people also would understand the migration to that and continuing to migrate to that for a whole myriad of reasons. But no, I will be sure that all of that is in the episode description for you as well.
Okay.
But outside of that, Dave, if there wasn't anything else, I will definitely let you get on with your day, and I will, stop stealing your evening from you, or your early evening,
Not
or
It is
late
not a
afternoon.
problem. Not a problem. I'm so sorry for the mix up before. It was like I said, my brain is putty. This month, like I'm going to be I'm flaky to everyone this month. I'm just yeah, 3 weeks before launch, my brain is just yeah. Anyway, thank you for the understanding.
You are more than welcome. And it's yeah, I perfectly understand it. It's a hectic time. It's a busy time releasing a game, and I'm thankful that we were able to find time and you were able to make some time for me, regardless during this hectic time for you, especially.